All right, we are recording for the action editing. So again, I wanted to use some student photos. So I'm going to use this photo that a student took. We can check their information. So they did a good job using a really fast shutter speed to freeze the action at 1/4000th of a second. So really good job freezing it. So what we want to do with this photo is we want to be able to really give it a nice kind of detailed look, and looks real sharp, and the subject looks really sharp and in detail. So as always, before I start editing, always just get in the habit, make a copy of that thing before you edit. So if worst comes to worst, you can throw it in the trash, go back to your original file and make a new copy and start over. So you could do global adjustments if you want. So if you open this in the Camera Raw, which again is similar to Photoshop Express, has a lot of the similar sliders that you would find in Photoshop Express. So maybe your exposure was a little dark. Maybe you need to line up the shadows, right? So it really kind of depends. Oh, sorry, that's my highlights. Let's bring up the shadows. There we go. Maybe the color temperature was off. Maybe you want to make it warmer or cooler. Totally up to you. So with Camera Raw and Photoshop Express, we do have clarity slider. Clarity slider is good for kind of bringing out big details, but not really fine details. And so Camera Raw, if you do have it, or Lightroom, should have a texture slider. The texture slider, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see it. So this was, let's put that back to 0. Let's actually zoom in a little more. There we go. So if I start bringing on the texture slider, you'll see it kind of brings out finer details. The problem is that it's bringing fine details to the whole photo. That's the problem, with our Camera Raw. So what I'm going to do is you could, if you want to be specific, you could use the adjustment brush, go down to the texture slider. So let's go into the brush. There we go. I'm just going to kind of paint on him, and then if I turn up the texture over here, it's just going to go where I paint it. So whatever's kind of the main part of your subject, or it could be the whole subject, you could just bring up the texture just on your subject using an adjustment brush in Camera Raw. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go back and just kind of get my overall settings done. So I'm going to add a little bit of vibrance and saturation, just get some colors going. Maybe I want to kind of focus on him, so I add a little vignette, feather it out. This is totally optional. I'm just trying to make the photo look good. So I'm going to open it up into Photoshop, which again has a similar layout as Photo P. And the technique I'm using, again, with the high pass is the same in Photo P. So what we want to do is zoom in. You can zoom in pressing Control+ on the keyboard, or Command+ on the Mac. So there's kind of two ways I can do this. I can sharpen it, so maybe it's like a little out of focus. So what I'm going to do is go Layer, Duplicate Layer, same as Photo P, hit OK. We could go Filter, down to Sharpen, and they do have a shake reduction in the full version of Photoshop. That is not in Photo P. That's a more advanced thing. Otherwise, it should have either a Smart Sharpen or Unsharp Mask in Photo P, where you can select the amount of sharpening, the radius of the sharpening, and what you're trying to take off. Is it a lens blur or a motion blur? So if it is a motion blur where you got some kind of fuzzy edges on your subject, you might want to use that. So I'm just going to, there we go. You can actually move around the preview. One sec. Let's go on the face. I'd kind of preview, what it is. So this is pretty extreme. So I'm going to bring the amount in between 2 to 3 pixels. And let's bring the amount up a little bit more. There we go. So I'm just going to hit OK. So now it's going to apply that filter to this copied layer we're working on. And that's why you want to work on a copied layer, is because I can add a layer mask to it and then paint it on where I want it to go, versus if I did it on the background layer, it does it to the whole photo and I can't control where it goes. So that's the benefit of working on a new layer. Also, if I mess up, I can throw that layer into the trash can and start over and just make a new copy of the background layer, and then do my filters on a new layer. The term for retouching is being non-destructive when we edit. If I work on one layer and I mess up, it is very destructive because I can't go back. Once it's that way, I can't go back, and then it's stuck that way. I can never change it again. So here's my before and after. I'm going to zoom in a bit more just so you can see the sharpening happening. So this is before and after, bringing out the finer details with the sharpening. So what I'm going to do is add a layer mask. Same as Photopea, it's called a raster mask. Looks the same thing, it's just like a rectangle with a circle inside of it. And we just want to mask out where we want it to go. So I could, paint black around my subject, or I could invert this so it's all black. So I'm going to press Command-I on a Mac, Control-I on a PC. And then I'm just going to get a white brush. I'm going to make it a little softer just so it blends better. I can change my flow if I wanted to go slower, like a lower percentage. I'm just going to do 100 for now. And then just make sure it's set to white. So if it's not on white, you can select the color white and then hit OK. It's the same as Photopea. So then I would just kind of, whatever's kind of the main part of my subject, I want that to be, sharpened. So maybe I want to get some of the hands to sharpen and the face of my subject, right? So just kind of make your best determination on what you want to kind of focus on, right, and get really sharp. So again, you can see my layer mask. I just kind of painted just the face and the hands, where it's kind of the main part. So I'm just going to combine these layers. So I'm going to go layer down to the bottom flattened image, which is also the same as Photopea. So now I got that sharpening just on that area. So for high pass, this one gives you more flexibility than what Camera Raw or Lightroom can do. It also is in Photopea, as I showed before. So again, I'm just going to go layer, duplicate layer, hit OK. Going to go filter, other, high pass. It is the same as Photopea. Filter, down to other, over to high pass. So again, the radius, when we did the negative high pass before for our portrait retouching, the radius really determines on like what you want to bring out on the details. So let's say, if I bring my radius down and I zoom in, you can kind of see how it's wrapped around finer details, the lower the radius. And then the more I bring it up, it kind of starts wrapping around differently. So kind of up to you. I would probably stick between like the, 4 to maybe 20s or 30s at the most range. I'm thinking around the teens are looking good. It's kind of bringing out these details pretty well. So again, it looks super weird. It looks like this kind of grayed out detailed thing. So we just need to change our blending mode. So same as Photopea, above your layers it says normal. Click on that and then go to either soft light, overlay, or hard light are kind of the three that works with a high pass. So soft light's the softest, overlay is the stronger, hard light's the strongest. So I'm just going to do overlay just so I can see it better on your screen. But this is before and this is after. So you can see it's really bringing out the details, right? Pretty extreme, actually. And if I zoom out, right, it looks pretty good, really bringing out these details. So again, I want to control where it goes. So I'm just going to add that layer mask. Click on the little rectangle with the circle. I'm going to invert it. So Control-I or Command-I on the Mac. Paintbrush, I can change the flow, make sure it's set to white. And then wherever I paint, will bring out the details just where I paint, right? You will notice with high pass, it kind of does some color shifting. I'll show you how to get rid of that. This is a bit more advanced, but I'm just kind of bringing out him real quick. It kind of like adds some colors on the edges and stuff, but there's a way to get rid of that. I'm just going to paint kind of on the main parts. So again, this is before and after, bringing out those details. So if we want, I'm just going to go to my layer and go Image, Adjustments, and Desaturate. So I'm basically going to take up any colors. And so you can see here, if I zoom in, especially this is before, I had these kind of like red fringe edges, and then I desaturated it and it got rid of that kind of color shifts. So if you're having that issue and you don't like it, or it's kind of giving these like colored edges issues, you could just desaturate that layer. So again, I would try to bring up the details so they're a decent noticeable. So again, this is without and this is with it. You could lower the opacity if it's too strong and do like 50% of that filter or a percentage of the filter. Again, soft light, you can switch that. It's a little softer. It's not as intense. This is before and after. It's still doing some. Hard light's the strongest. Sorry, hard light's here. So I can see it really strong, bringing out those details. So a lot of times when I see like NFL ads or like football and sport ads, a lot of times they're using high pass on the subject just to make them look really like strong and gritty and detailed. I'm just going to leave that because it's easy to see for you guys. And then I'm just going to go layer and then flatten image. So go layer down to flatten image. And then let's save it out. So just make sure this one's already a copy. So I'm just going to save it as a JPEG. That's fine. So make sure your format says JPEG. Because open in camera raw, I'm just going to click replace and then OK. So what I'm going to look for when I'm grading is one, yeah, I did those global adjustments, but did I bring out the details on my subject? Did I sharpen them? Maybe I did a high pass where I really brought out those details. So again, if I zoom in here to before and after, really kind of sharp and in detail for our action photos. But I'm going to do a quick, just kind of show you where everything is in Photopea. I'm not going to do the full demo, just so you can find everything and just see it through Photopea. I would use this one if I was editing on a computer. And then let's go to, let's do V's Pumpkins. So again, whenever you want to duplicate a layer, just go layer, duplicate layer, and then filter other high pass. And then you can, choose your radius. I'm going to do like 23, hit OK. And then to change your blending mode, click on normal. You got your soft light, overlay, and hard light. And then just add a little mask, invert it, press Control-I. Make sure your brush is set to white. So I'm just going to go to my brush. Here we go. The default on Photopea is 100% hard, so always, make sure to adjust your brush before you get painting. You can adjust the flow. And then this size, you can change that here. I'm just going to make it pretty big just to do this real quick. And then once you start painting with white, I'm bringing out the details just on my subjects. You can see where I'm painting with white on my layer mask, right? And then before and after, bringing out those details. Again, go to layer and then flatten image. And then, export that as a JPEG. And make sure your quality is good, and then hit save and download it to the computer. For a smartphone, there's kind of two ways of doing this. You could basically, in Photoshop Express, if I was using that, so I'm just going to open up Photoshop Express and then pick a photo real quick. So here's my dog. Took this photo of my dog running at the beach. I'm actually going to pin me so I can see myself larger. Okay, there's the dog. So really pretty sunset from Halloween weekend. No worries, Aiden. So what I'm going to do is under the adjustments, just click on the adjustments, scroll over to the clarity slider, and then I would pump it up. So I'm just going to increase the clarity so it looks really sharp and gritty. You could also go into the sharpen slider. So there's a sharpen slider as well, and increase the sharpness as well. So it's going to apply it to the whole photo. Once I have it clarity and sharpen, then I'm going to scroll over. Again, you have these kind of options here. And then one of the options says blur. And so I'm going to do a radial blur where basically I move it over my subject so it keeps that sharp. And then I blur out the background. So then I'm just going to increase the blur around my subject. So it's not going to look as good or smooth if I did this in Photoshop. You can kind of see here, like she's really sharp with the sharpening and the clarity, and then I'm adding blur around her, right? And so you could do it that way if I was using Photoshop Express. I'm going to check Photoshop Fix. So I'm just going to add a new photo to it. Just give me a second. Let's do Bisu running. And then, yeah, I don't think it has much for sharpening. No, yes, it just defocuses. I'm gonna just check Photoshop Mix real quick. See if that has any sharpening features. Got to log into my account. It took me off. Just gonna add that photo. Let's see. It does have a shake reduction. So if you had, issues. Okay, so Photoshop Mix seems to have the clarity option. So if I click on that, it's going to apply it again to the whole photo. If I increase the clarity, it's going to apply it to the whole photo. Just hit the check to confirm it. There is a shake reduction option. That's sending you to the Creative Cloud. That's not what we want. Yeah, I would say really, yeah, it wants to kind of send you to like another kind of Creative Cloud app. So I would say probably the Photoshop Express is the best option if I was using a smartphone, where you're using the clarity and the sharpening sliders, turning those up to the whole photo, and then basically adding a blur to kind of soften the edges around your subject. That'd kind of be the best approach. So I'm just going to turn off the recording.